Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we're going to preview the UFC BJJ 8 happening on Thursday, May 21st, featuring Mikey Musumeci versus Kevin Dantzler. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Adam.
How you doing, Adam?
Doing all right.
Good to have you back in, man. We have a fun one today. It's with every UFC card, it is a combination of really interesting matchmaking and somewhat odd matchmaking. This one's really no different. Unfortunately, in the women's co-main event, we previously had Cassia Moura versus Bia Basilio. It is now Cassia Moura versus Sabrina. Give me that last name, Adam.
I think it's Gondim.
Gondim. A name that I'm going to butcher, so I'm going to keep throwing to you for that name every time. So you were really excited about the Bianca matchup, so hopefully they're going to remake that matchup at another point in time. But yeah, we're just going to run through essentially the UFC BJJ 8 card. Not a whole lot of news going on. This one is on a Thursday, which I used to kind of hate. I do really kind of like the midweek cards because it gives you something to put on when like you're at the gym. We all kind of sit together, watch the first couple matchups at the gym, and everyone kind of like transitions over back home and then has a couple days to like talk about the matchups during the week. And it just like, I don't know. I like that it kind of gets broken up by the week. I wish it was a little earlier in the evening on a Thursday, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. So let's kick right into it. Mikey Musumeci versus Kevin Dantzler. This is Mikey Musumeci's, what title defense is this for him? 1, 2, 3. This will be his 4th title defense in the UFC BJJ. He beat, for the first one, Harrison Gabriel. Then he beat Kevin Carrasco. Then he beat Shea Montague at UFC BJJ 5. And he's back versus Kevin Dantzler. This matchup is really interesting, mainly because, like, it's interesting because really how Mikey is going to play it. Like, Mikey on paper should beat Dantzler hands down. Mikey is a multiple-time world champion. Dantzler is not and has just not had that success either gi or in no-gi. Dantzler has biggest wins over guys like Merab 4 years ago, Aljamain Sterling. He has some good wins on CFFC. But Mikey Musumeci, during the entire time that Dantzler has been mostly in the regional scene, like doing good work in the regional scene, Mikey Musumeci has been IBJJF world champion since like 2016, 2017. One world champion, who's number one. Like he has done it all, and now he's the UFC BJJ champion. On paper, this is a mismatch. You brought up something interesting on the pre-show, Adam, about some of the comments that Mikey was making in the lead-up to this that I think honestly make this matchup a lot more interesting than it was if I just thought this was going to be a leg lock shootout.
Yeah, so Mikey's been talking about calling Dantzler a butt scooter and saying that he wants to smash him and, you know, all of those things that he's saying. So I'm looking at this match a little differently than, like you said, it may have been a leg lock shootout. I think Mikey's going to primarily be a top player against Dantzler in this matchup, a little similar to the way he was against Montague, but I don't know.
Montague's also a guy that has a really like danger. Like Montague also was a guy that wants to play from the bottom. Like I think a lot of guys give Mikey a lot of undeserved shit because in a lot of his pro matchups, we see him on the bottom, like giving the leg up and scooting and playing from the bottom. But if you go back and watch Mikey's like world title runs in IBJJF, like the dude is a really good passer. And you saw it versus Montague. Like Shea wanted to play on the bottom. He tore his quad or his leg there in that first round. So it's like, and that might have changed the factor. But it's like, even before he tore it, Mikey Musumeci was still kind of dicing the guard up and
he
like
was passing when
yeah,
he
not
wanted.
a lot of guys pass Shea's guard. So I think it's very funny that Mikey kind of gets the rap. I was like, oh, it's a butt scooter. And then you watch like, yeah, he's actually like a really like world, like one of the best passers in the world, hands down at the division. But so on paper, we have a couple of recent matchups that I want to talk about for Dantzler, and that's he has a heel hook loss to Marcio Rios in 2025 at EBI, and he has the loss to Junior Casio at Fury in 2025, and then again he beat Sam Michael with that really quick armbar at CFCC BJJ 13 that was like 13 seconds. It was super quick. That's at least it's listed as 13 seconds on Topology here. It was super, super quick. On paper, Mikey has also beat Junie a match that, again, was pretty definitive when Dantzler got subbed by him. So it's like on paper, this is Mikey as the stronger leg locker versus Dantzler. That being said, you and I watched a Dantzler matchup that he had, might have been Pans or something. Where
it was Nogi Pans.
It was Nogi Pans. He hits a Mikey lock at Nogi Pans, and we're like, oh, snap, that's an interesting development. So I don't think you're going to hit Mikey with his own shit, but Dantzler is a pretty accomplished leg locker. He's got good leg locks. He's comfortable on the bottom. He's comfortable with guys trying to smash through his guard. Like, he's comfortable to play there. I just don't think that he's going to be able to keep a guard together if, like you're saying, like Mikey's saying, Mikey is going to look to take it to top position. Like, I don't know what guard, if you can pass a guy like Shea Montague, who can play fully inverted, but you can pass like Bruno Malfacine, you can deal with all the guys that Mikey dealt with at light feather and IBJJF in the gi, where there's so much more real estate to keep a guard together. And you also have more options as a passer too. But like, then we recently saw him pass Shea. And it passed Shea kind of relatively easily in a way that we do not see guys pass Shea's guard. Like, guys will sit in Shea's guard and be unable to deal with that most of the round. Or Shea will get a regard gun, and they're just never going to settle that pass down. Mikey got that. Adam, what do you think Dantzler plays here for a guard to, like, try to deal with if Mikey really does want to be? What are his options? Like, his options really, I think, come down to he's got to shoot for the leg. You've got to have like a really aggressive entry underneath and try to trap Mikey's legs. But then unfortunately you're kind of stuck in, now you're trying to out leg lock Mikey Musumeci.
Which is
a tall order. I'm trying to think.
It's a tall order and then some, because now Mikey can counter lock you. Yeah. Because he's very good at that. He's very good. Like, in the Shea matchup, Shea started to get like a little piece. He wasn't getting like a full encapsulation of the foot, but he would start to get a little piece, and then Mikey would just take it away. And then Mikey would start to move at an angle or pass or start to get something. And then when Mikey decided to kick it into that extra gear, the pass was done.
Yeah, that was the weird thing in that matchup.
It was just like, I don't know if this is what he's intending to doing, or he's feeling him out and seeing how he wants to play this through. Yeah, unfortunately, with the I think the quad injury, you never get to see how it could have gone till the end, because, you know, he's limited in his movement, and then Mikey falls back in a foot lock, and I mean, it's over relatively quickly
in the second round.
Yeah, and I like I said, I think Mikey passes. I don't know how, because
I'm gonna say I'm kind of less interested in like how he passed. I don't think that's, for me, an X factor in Mikey's game that I'm like concerned about him being like, cool, if Mikey is gonna be deciding to be the passer on top, like, I assume it's gonna look pretty similar. Like, Dantzler's a good level of flexibility, but I know that he's not as flexible as Shea. Like, that's an attribute that Shea specifically has at Rooster weight. He can play that foot behind the head guard, like that fully smashed inverted guard. And for me, that is like the pinnacle of, okay, if you can pass that, there's not a guard that someone can put in front of you that will really prevent you from if you can pass the inverted guard where the guys can like block you from north-south, if you can get past that, there's not a guard anyone can put up. So it's like, I don't think Dantzler will just like, he will not have a different guard that will prevent Mikey from passing if Mikey decides to pass. And then it's like, I think it's going to be a similar pass. He's going to go head and chest. He's going to go north-south there. I don't think Dantzler's going to be able to take an armbar off the bottom if he does. I don't think Dantzler's going to get... It wouldn't surprise me to have Dantzler get an entry into the legs, and then exactly like what happened with Shea. Like, you see it, like, okay, this is further than I thought it was going to get. And then Mikey takes the entry away, and then Mikey gets the pass. You were saying on the pre-show that you think Mikey's going to go for a choke.
Yeah,
you've thought about it now. Do you have a thought for what do you think it's going to be? Rear naked choke? Do you think it's going to be a side control choke? Do you think it's going to be like a head and arm choke?
If Mikey stays true to what he's been talking about, saying he's going to smash him, I think it could potentially be maybe a Darce or an Anaconda. That would be my 2-cent guess that I think could potentially be the finish. Now, if he gets to his back, it's over really quickly because Mikey on someone's back is like white on rice. It is not good. There is not any way that Dantzler is going to get out of it without getting subbed.
Yeah, I mean, he has, I think, how many wins a rear naked choke does he have? He has 2-1. Again, he beat Masakazu Imanari by rear naked choke. Hopefully, it's funny. Speaking of Masakazu Imanari, hopefully by next week's show, like next week's show will be coming out probably right around the day that I'm trying to train at Masakazu Imanari's gym. So it's very funny that he comes up again in conversation last week on the show that Miranda and I are putting out next week when I'm in Japan, and then here again. And he also rear naked chokes Omar Amarari, the Atos black belt. Where I was at that fight. That was the one that was in Denver that I went to for my birthday. So like Mikey's got a really good rear naked choke game. So it's like, yeah, if he forces Dantzler to turtle and he doesn't take the anaconda or the Darce choke, the rear naked choke is always there. I think the smart money is on something like a rear naked choke. But I think with the stuff that Mikey's been saying in the lead up to this, it kind of makes me want to think that he is going to go for something that is not necessarily something we have seen him do with the choking game. And I think that's kind of why I'm thinking like head and arm, kind of like Johnny Gripple style. Head and arm or the Darce and the anaconda, I think are better options for me or better options like what you've suggested, because it's something that's not really, again, looking through Mikey's record here, a lot of leg lock wins.
Don't see one on his record.
I don't see in the black belt record. Again, we're on the topology record. We're not on like the Greater BJJ Heroes record because, again, the linking is better for UFC BJJ 8 in topology for all the fighters, for the profiles. But yeah, I'm not seeing a Darce or an anaconda. He has to have one, but it's out of his wheelhouse a little bit, so it wouldn't be surprising for me. Again, taking on a guy like Dantzler, that the smart money is on you. Yeah, you can just drop back and probably get him in leg locks. But it's also, if that is the one spot that Dantzler is like known to be really good, you're better at Mikey Musumeci, but why would you engage him there if you could pass and could smash? Like, it's maybe a smarter option or a less resistive option to try to go that route. That being said, Dantzler does have recent in 2022 and 2025 big highlight heel hook losses. So it does make me kind of concerned that might be an easy avenue for Mikey as well.
Yeah, and I think if he gets a deep enough bite, like Mikey goes into deep waters with subs in ways that like I would never be comfortable with, but I'm also not a pro athlete. But I've seen like what look like real catches, and Mikey's just like, no, I'm just gonna slip out of it. And then he counters while slipping out of it at the same moment, presenting a real threat where like his catch is a lot stronger than your catch was before.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Mikey gets a lot of undeserved shit. I really do enjoy watching him compete. He's a really interesting guy, but he just has an interesting game because he is weirdly more well-rounded other than the wrestling than people give him credit for.
But he's been working on that. And like into the lead up, he's been saying, I'm going with this fight.
Gonna wrestle him.
I don't think he is either. But he's talking about like these boys with Aljamain Sterling who lost to him.
Right, to loss to Dantzler, so wants to get that back now.
Right, and then he's saying, I want to smash. And that's why I'm like, we may see a lot more Mikey top game. That's something Mikey's talked about wanting to show more of in Nogi, which he hasn't really shown as often. I mean, of course it's there. If it's there in Gi, it should be there in Nogi.
Right.
But I'm just like, to me, my money is on a submission you don't see out of him very often. Now, could he fall back to Old Faithful and just rear naked choke him? Totally. Still be a cool finish.
Yeah.
But I think if he's going to do what he says he's going to do, he is not letting chest-to-chest connection go. And if he starts to turn into him, Mikey has long enough limbs as a smaller guy that he can sink it in and it will be deep.
Yeah, I always forget how weirdly proportioned Mikey is because he has incredibly short legs and then freakishly long arms. And he has a super interesting like body configuration, and I think throws a lot of guys off. And we haven't talked about it in like probably a couple of years because I was just kind of I get kind of lost in the technical nuances of his game and forget to talk about like, oh yeah, he's just like really oddly proportioned in a way that throws a lot of guys off, like in a really interesting way. So again, easy money here is on Mikey Musumeci. It would be probably one of the biggest upsets. It would be the biggest upset in UFC BJJ history, but that's not saying much after 8 events. It would be one of the bigger professional grappling upsets that we've seen in a long time. I mean, it would be on par with probably Nathan Orchard beating AJ Agazarm at one of the early SUGs. Like, it was like, that'd be a huge, that would be a huge upset. Or like Tim Spriggs and Kaynan Duarte at the Who's Number One from like 2020 or something, like whatever year that was. Like, it would be on the stage of that where it's like, man, Dantzler could just retire after that. You'd be Mikey. You'd be the champion UFC BJJ, but like,
Got to do it twice.
You gotta do it twice. That is the rule. So yeah, any other thoughts on this matchup? Again, easy money here is on Mikey Musumeci, just based on the record and the accolades and the credentials alone. But
I'd be surprised if it makes it to the second round.
Yeah, I would too. I think this is. Yeah, I think it would be. I would be quite surprised if Mikey doesn't turn up the heat even like late into the round and get it done. Again, we just saw. You watch the Ronda fight, or you see the GIF of it.
17 seconds.
Was it that long? I thought it was Morote. It was double leg to armbar, and it was like, okay, well that was as long as that was. I appreciate Ronda getting me out of there quick. It could be a very quick matchup. I think if Mikey really he can flip that switch, man. We saw him. It was in the Shea match. Like we saw him just go, feel you out. Boom, pass. I'm like, oh, that's done. Like, yep, you're not getting that guard back. He's just going to be around you. So yeah, I think it's going to be first round. Again, easy money is on Mikey here. So it is exciting. I want to see more of Mikey's passing because it fascinates me because he's just so good at it, and in a way that almost nobody else at bantamweight and lower is. He just seems to actually be able to get around guys' guards in a way that just like, why is it only Mikey can do that?
My only guess is because Mikey also plays these guards. And since Mikey is someone who does a lot of work on the guards that he plays and a lot of positional sparring, he talks about like spending what some people spend in a day job in the gym. So
it's his
like
day job. That's what he does.
What kind of guard are you going to show him that he hasn't seen, that he hasn't worked on the offense and probably seen, how people approach it that's going to surprise him.
Right.
And that's all he does. Like, he's talked about being in the gym for 6 hours a day.
Yeah, man. So that's the main event. I got nothing else on that. Adam, you got anything else?
No.
All right, let's move on to Cassia Moura versus Sabrina. Give me the last name again. Gondim. This is interesting. So we pulled a little footage on Sabrina. She looks like she's now out of fight sports. She was previously not out of fight sports, but she's been there for a little bit. Her main achievements from BJJ Heroes are first place at South American Championships in 2023, second place IBJJF Pans in 2024, third place at Brazilian Nationals 2023, second place at South American Championships. I think that's an absolute. And then third place at Euros in 2024. She has some good accolades at the brown belt level in 2022 and purple in 2019. But generally, like from the matches that we saw, again, mostly we pulled stuff in the gi because that was what was available quick. She has 2 recent wins over Beatrice Jan in 2025 and 2026 at Pans in the gi in 26 and then Pans no gi in 2025. She has a loss to Sarah Gavao that we did watch in the Pan Americans, but it was not a submission loss. It was a points loss to Sarah Gavao, and she spent a lot of that match in Sarah Gavao's guard, throwing off arm bars, looking to pass. We watched 2 other matches for her, and primarily what she's doing is, in the gi, so it's going to be very, very different no gi. She's playing a real seated, low passing position and kind of camping out there and waiting for an opportunity to essentially do like a double skirt underpass or like a smash pass across through an armbar. Like that seems to be her MO in the gi. Again, we didn't pull a lot of no-gi matches because they were harder to find. She does have an Armin Ezekiel loss to Janaína Libre in the crown, but it's also Janaína Libre. So that's like a very, very high level. and then Amanda Bruce via inside heel hook, and we just saw what Amanda Bruce did to Jasmine Rocha, 2 weeks ago at Main Character, 2 or 3 weeks ago? Like, so that's like an incredible matchup. Again, I really would kind of rather see Amanda Bruce in this matchup versus Cassia Moura, honestly. So that's Sabrina. Cassia Moura in the bowl, interestingly enough, again, pulling a record in the bowl, a lot of decisions in the bowl. Like you were talking about her, the contrast in her versus IBJJF versus UFC BJJ. So UFC BJJ, she just beat Fionn Davies at UFC BJJ 6 for the title, and that's how she gets the title. Split decision, it was close. We were a little disappointed with like the activity level that Fionn had. It was like a much slower paced matchup. We were kind of like, okay, I'm kind of waiting for both to really go, and Cassia, I think, takes a reasonable split decision here. She beats Alex Enriquez by decision at UFC BJJ 3. She beats Talita Alencar via decision at UFC BJJ 1. She beats Sarah Galvao, again, in 2025 by decision. She beat Cindy Young at Fight Pass Invitational 8, and then she beat Jessica Crane by rear naked choke. That was all the way back in 2024, and that was on Who's Number One. We see a lot of decisions here from her in the last 3 years, 2 or 3 years, in any sort of bold environment, or any sort of UFC event. Given the kind of style contrast between Sabrina and her, I unfortunately kind of think we're probably going to see Cassia Moura just sort of try to wrestle her down and play on top. And this is going to be a kind of a back and forth, slower paced matchup. Adam, what are your kind of thoughts here, given that's in the pit and given Cassia Moura's recent performances in the pit versus Talita Alencar, Alex Enriquez, and Fionn Davies?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's going to be another decision. And like you were saying, it's kind of odd that when she competes at the IBJJF level, she's finishing ladies. Like, there's not matches that are like being left undecided. Like, it is being stamped with a submission. You know, some of them, there were points wins, but that's still stamping it. Like, it's not like you're leaving it in the hands of the refs. And I mean, the last Nogi World, she went up and she didn't win via submission, but she won just taking them down, letting them up,
Yeah.
even though they outweighed her. So it's interesting that, like, you know, if it's just flat mats, you're putting them away. In the bowl, it's a little bit more decision. Maybe that's a tactical thing. Maybe that's, what her coach wants her to do. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, at the end of the day, a win is a win. You either keep your title or lose it, and she's kept it so far. But I mean,
it is really interesting that I think we're seeing it more and more now. The difference in like an amateur rule set versus like a pro rule set, and we're starting to see athletes, and I think Cassia Moura is an example of that have like a very different game in like an IBJJF rule set versus something like a Who's Number One or UFC Fight Pass Invitational or UFC BJJ. It is really interesting, the sort of contrast. Again, the other thing is these pro rule sets, a lot of them don't have points. So we don't have points in a lot of pro rule sets for this, so it makes the decision. So, you can blow someone out of the water. Like, she very clearly dominated Alex Enriquez, but didn't get a finish. So on the record, it reads the decision. I think we do kind of forget like how dominant that performance was, but it's also, end of the day, you didn't put him away. There is no other metric for the record other than decision. And so it's like, so I think, and I think bad about that of like, decision. It's like, we kind of forget how dominant some of those matchups were for her to win the decision. I think I remember the Fionn matchup that was like, it was.
Yeah, because that could have kind of gone either way.
It's a split. I mean, a split.
Right.
Yeah.
Because technically, at least from what they posted, like, they want to see who's working the most. They also want to see submission attempts and, the culmination of that, which is why I could see why it was a split, because Fionn attempted that, the footlock. I'm blanking on the name of it. Kyle Terry, she tried the Kyle lock.
Yeah.
She tried it. Now, it looked legit, but Cassia didn't blink. Like, it's
Yeah.
like,
And so that's like, you have two, like one of the best women in the world. You have some of the best women in the world. You're like, okay, well, they're not like, it's like it always comes back to, if you watch someone break Paulo Miao's foot and he doesn't blink, does it count? And you're like, I don't know. Cause like, it doesn't affect the match. Like, he didn't tap and you didn't do anything to tap him, and you've hurt his foot, but he doesn't care and it doesn't matter. So do you get rewarded for that as a competitor for like, well, he broke his foot. Like, yeah, he doesn't care though. And didn't change the matchup. You're like, it's a really interesting circular argument that never goes anywhere, because it's like, well, you did damage, but he didn't care, but his foot's broken, but he doesn't care, and it doesn't matter because it's not changing what he's doing in the matchup. So did it matter that you did the damage? Did the damage matter? Do you judge it on the damage? And so it's sort of it's submission attempts. And one has this problem as well, where it's like they have the catch system, and it's like the catch system I think is better, but when you get into like the small margins of like, well, was that a better catch than this catch? They're both catches, but if neither of them resulted in like a finish, how do you weigh them together in the UFC? And that was my big takeaway for both the Ffion match with Adele and the Ffion match here with Cassia, was like, I don't really know what their criteria is, because there's no points. There's no really good metric to like, as the viewer, know, oh, she won that round, she didn't win. They're like, what do they care about? If you're on top and like pressuring them through a guard and they're trying to sweep you, like, do we care about sweeps? Do we care about who's on top? Does it matter who's on top? Like, the rule set makes it really, really hard to actually pin down what we want to see.
And I mean, the commentators will talk about it, but the commentators aren't the judges. So it's like, wow, I could hear the commentator's opinion on, well, maybe this person won this round, or they did this, they were active and they did this, but the judges can see it a total different way. And I'm in agreement with you. I like that the refs at one yell that catch.
Yeah.
And then usually off of that catch, there's a response from the bottom person. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's the way that, at least in my mind, it should be scored, is if someone's, attacking some sort of an arm lock and you now have to defend to get out of it.
We call this the fight to win rule, where it's like, you don't get credit for a submission attempt until they have to defend it. Where it's like, cool, he has to defend that. That gets him basically a favor into the ad for a point. And fight to win breaks down how they do it. But I like that it's a submission. It's like, if we both grab a foot lock, a straight ankle lock, and no one does anything with it, and you don't react and I don't react, nothing doesn't matter. If you have to start defending my straight ankle lock, or I have to start defending your straight ankle lock, or you transition like a knee bar, and I have to start pressing out and defending that knee bar, then you're going to get the reward for that in the eyes of like a decision, because like it was a submission that required defense. That's not what every organization uses, but that's the one that Fight to Win uses. And I've always really enjoyed that as like a metric, because it's like, cool, did they have to deal like two guys grabbing straight ankles, gritting it out, and neither are actually that tight? It's like, well, that shouldn't mean anything. So the one that requires defense, like, okay, you're having to do something. You have to change what you're doing because you have a sub, that you are starting to put in. Cool, that's what I'm going to do. And I think one is actually really good about that, where it's like, cool, that's not on, that's not on, that's not on. Okay, that's on. I'm going to call that a catch. And then you go, like, I think there's been very few times in one where I've disagreed. Usually it's on the other side where it's like, I think that should be a catch. And the ref's like not awarding a catch. It's usually not on the other side where it's like, dude, he's calling that a catch. I'm usually in very much agreement with one. But again, here in the UFC, we don't have super good criteria. With all of that being said, back to the actual matchup at hand, I think this is Cassia Moura. I think she's going to be active enough, and I think her wrestling is good enough, and she's comfortable enough in the bowl to get this done. It would be a big upset to have late replacement for Bia Basilio, Sabrina, come in and win this. But again, this is, we've seen odder matchups in the UFC. So what do you got? Any closing thoughts? You got any other thoughts that you want to give for the matchup?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think it's as Cassia as to take home. I think it's, like you said, wrestling, pressure passing. She'll probably try to submit her. Who knows if who knows if it happens or not? But it seems like, at least from what I've seen from her, that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
They can't wrestle with you, and then when they're on the bottom, they're getting tired of your pressure.
My only question is, I don't know. I've not watched a lot of matches with Sabrina on the bottom. That's my only kind of X factor of this, is like, I'm just not familiar enough with Sabrina's game, where it's like she just might be some monstrous. The matches we happen to pull before the show might be just a few instances of top play that she has, and normally she's a bottom player, but it doesn't look like that. But it would be very funny to just be wrong in that direction, and it's like, oh yeah, Cassia Moura has on the bottom, and then she's just this monster on the bottom. But I think, again, what wins Cassia Moura most of the matches in the UFC BJJ is that wrestling. She has good combination wrestling. Fionn started to figure it out at the end. But I think generally Fionn was one of the best women in the world. Most other women in the division aren't going to figure it out in a matchup. We just haven't seen them figure it out in a matchup like Fionn did. So I think easy
when
money.
Fionn countered her with that judo move, it showed she was catching something.
Yeah.
There was a tell. Mm-hmm. Now, unfortunately, it was a little later in the match.
Like third round, I think.
Yeah, and I was like, ooh, if you did that.
That was second round. This turns the fight around.
Right.
It was third. It was a little too late for that to work. So, yeah, I think my money here is on Cassia Moura. Yeah, that's all I got. Moving on, let's talk about. So we have a bunch of other matches here. Some have more information, some don't have other information. We're going to run down in card order as it is in Tapology, and kind of be quick on some of these matchups. We have Danilo Moreno versus Ethan Crelinsten. This is the first matchup that Ethan Crelinsten will be in the UFC BJJ for. He notably won the Polaris lightweight, or defended the Polaris lightweight title, and then basically was like, get me on the UFC, get me in the Bolagon, or wherever he called it. And they saw that, and they was like, yes, and so they brought him in. Danilo fought for the first UFC BJJ title at lightweight. This is being done at lightweight. He lost to Carlos Henrique. He won the qualifier, went all the way up with Carlos Henrique. He got armbarred in the third round by Carlos Henrique. Carlos Henrique went on to defend the title a couple of times and just recently lost to Lucas Valente via footlock in the third round. Carlos Henrique beat Mateus Gabriel after that via decision, and then had that third matchup at UFC BJJ 7 with Lucas Valente. Ethan has looked really good. He looked really good in Polaris. Again, the Polaris matchup recently was against the Polaris qualifier, so it wasn't really the same level of guy that he's been going up recently. I think Ethan is a little hot and cold. He's more hot than he is cold. I think Ethan should be able to beat Danilo here. I think the wrestling is good. I think generally Ethan's passing has gotten much, much better. And I think he's been in karate combat before. He's going to be used to the bowl. He's going to be used to the guys at B team with the pit wall that they've been using. Like the angle is not going to be a factor for him. I think it's going to be an advantage for him, if anything.
I just think Ethan's probably been doing no-gi a lot longer at a lot higher competition. Not to say that Danilo hasn't. It's just Ethan's been around a while.
Been forever, dude. ADCC 2017. Like, he loses to Agazarm, and you're like, oh, snap. And then, like, again, Ethan was the first brown belt to have a BJJ Heroes page. They didn't do that before Ethan. They were like, he's been competing against the top-level guys for so long, we just have to give him a page. Like, he was the guy that broke that rule. And then we had, like, the Rotolos and Tackett's. Like, that after came. But Ethan was the guy that broke that rule where BJJ Heroes was like, he is so notable. We have to give him a page at brown belt because, like, we can't not have his records here because he is so important for the guys he has faced. Again, he looked incredible at Polaris, but the levels there. I think that if that Ethan shows up ready, and I think he will, because you don't make a call. I think, for me, this comes down to preparation. I think if Ethan comes in prepared like he does trials and like he looks for ADCC, like he looked for CJI, I think that Ethan goes through most of the guys in his division. Again, we see that champion level Crelinsten that we see at Polaris show up here. I think this is a really good showing for Ethan Crelinsten. Again, Danilo looked good, but that loss to Carlos Henrique kind of sits really fresh in my mind. And I think Ethan is I would honestly be really interested to see Ethan match up with Carlos Enrique. I think that would be interesting. I think that's the matchup that they are setting to make up, or honestly, fast track Ethan right against Lucas Valente in this division, like the champion. I think these three guys, again, you're gonna if Danilo Moreno beats Ethan, then you give him the rematch with Carlos Enrique, or you fast track him against Lucas Valente. If Ethan wins this, you either give the matchup with Carlos Enrique, the former champion, or you throw him right into Lucas Valente and you put him in another title as a title challenger. I think either matchup, either way, the UFC, this is good matchmaking. This is like how I would actually like to see the UFC do their matchmaking, because then you have a semblance of a division. It makes sense. Hey, you have your guys at 155. It makes sense that Ethan would fight this guy, then he would fight this guy, then he would fight the champion. Hey, your champion's going to fight the guy that was, came up the ranks, came up one fight, and then boom. Like, the divisions are small right now still, but that it makes sense if you're going to absorb another champion from a highly prestigious organization like Polaris, and Ethan's been a champion there for a while. It makes sense that you would fast track him into a guy like Valente. I would much rather favor Ethan over Danilo here than I would Valente. I think Valente is a real tough matchup for him in an interesting way. I think Carlos Enrique is a really interesting matchup as well. I think Moreno can throw a huge wrench into Cronston's game here. But overall, I really do think that Ethan will get it done with just general top pressure, passing, and then activity alone.
Ethan's just super well-rounded. So that's the thing, is like he won, but we forget he won the EBI overtime thing.
Like, versus all 10 Atlanta guys, and everyone, like Ethan, very hard to put away. You need a guy like Josh Cisneros to put him away. And it's like Cisneros has just been on another level. We saw Cisneros at main character with a blown knee look phenomenal versus Cade Sistos. Like, one knee and still out-wrestle the guy, Cade Sistos, like known for leg locks, known for wrestling. And Ethan talks about that match with ADCC versus Cisneros of, like, he just got tired. He got excited, he got tired, and I think he's going to learn from that experience. And, like, in these 3-round matchups, when he has more time to recover, which is more so what they're used to with the kind of how they've been training, again, for me, I'm way more familiar with Ethan's game, so that's always the easier pick for me to make as an analyst. And it just makes sense that you would not immediately absorb a champion and then match him up in a way from an organizational standpoint you thought he was going to lose.
Right. And I mean, Danilo, to his credit, does have, a phenomenal partner in his camp in Elizabeth Clay, who is a phenomenal leg locker in her own right.
I think probably the best female leg locker in the world.
He should be ready. He should be ready. But again, I don't know, man. Like, this is Ethan Carlos that we're talking about. Like, I've seen Danilo in the gi. He's very good. I've seen him fight no-gi. He's very good. But Ethan's just a dog. He's been around for so long.
I hate when we have to make he's a dog pick. It's like, yeah, man, it's like there's so few people beat Ethan with any regularity that it's just like Dorian Oliveras. Like, okay, cool, he's Dorian Oliveras, beats him in trials. You're like, okay, I see that. And then like Josh Cisneros beats him at ADCC. You're like, okay, I see that. Like, they're all guys that could be on any given day the top 5 in the world. And you're like, okay, like those are the caliber of guys that Ethan is losing to. And again, Danilo losing to Carlos Enrique is like, okay, well, he's one of the top 5 guys in the world. It makes sense. But then immediately that loss, it was a competitive, but that loss to Lucas Valente makes me go, okay, well, that's like, you've now lost to the guy that lost to the champion, that was the champion. It throws a wrench in it. I think matchmaking perspective, it would make sense for the UFC to match Ethan up in a way that makes sense. So I'm going to pick on, honestly, I'm going to pick on conspiracy matchmaking of like, that's where they're picking Ethan stylistically to win this one. And I'm going with that. I do think it's going to be Renegade choke. I think he gets there.
He is pretty great on the back. So
he's really good on the back. You can make an upset. You make a different pick. I'm wrong all the time. Like Josh says, we're wrong most of the time, but it's fun to play the pick game.
Maybe it's armbar from the back.
Armbar from the back. Okay. Wouldn't surprise me. So moving on. Next one, we have William Tackett versus Enrico Syed. Enrico is a guy we saw recently at trials, buggy choke guys. Didn't make it to the finals, but he's good. He is out of, was he Fight Sports? I think was Syed.
I think it was Fight Sports.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of Fight Sports people on the card versus William Tackett. Again, I'm going to kind of go conspiracy matchmaking on this. You have William Tackett, who just fought Ronaldo, gassed hard, and got did he get put away by Ronaldo? Decision?
I think it was a decision.
Was it a decision? Or was it?
Yeah, unanimous.
It was a decision, yeah, because he almost at the end. I was really surprised that William Tackett gassed as hard as he did versus Ronaldo. I'm concerned about that, but I think they like Tackett. They love his brother. I think it would make sense for them to match him up in a winnable matchup versus a guy that's up and coming, again, versus Enrico Syed. I was impressed with Syed at trials, but I think if you got a buggy, guys, I am just really concerned with guys that leverage the buggy choke. It's a great tool, and guys have gotten better at it, but I think that Tackett is a guy that you're not going to be able to buggy choke, and I think is going to capitalize on being able to pass you to get on top and impose. And that's my concern. Again, that's weird that the things that Enrico won the trials matchups with, the big one he won the trials matchup with, is why I think William Tackett will beat him.
And I mean, the team that he's under, they are very competitive.
Yeah,
so that's
Fight Factory.
Yeah, Fight Factory has a lot of bodies, a lot of competitors. Mm-hmm. So he's getting rounds, looking at multiple different buggy chokes.
And he's got his brother. You got your brother in the room, man. You got the lightweight, or not the lightweight, the welterweight champion in the room. Yeah, man, that's a really tough win. It's weird. Looking at the topology record for William Tackett is super weird because it's got a lot of red in ways you wouldn't expect. His recent record on topology, again, it's missing a bunch. It's one I love topology, but it is pretty meh with BJJ records. He loses to Ronaldo by decision, UFC BJJ 4. He beats Kyle Chambers, UFC BJJ 2, but he could choke in the first round. He beats Achilles Rocha at Fight Pass 11, May 25th, one of the last Fight Pass invitationals. He loses to João Gabriel Rocha. Again, this JGR, giant size discrepancy there at Craig Jones Invitational 1 in 2024 in the above 80 bracket. When Tackett was at the below 80 bracket. His brother was at the below 80 bracket. He loses to Francisco Lowe in 2023 at who's number 118. Again, Francisco Lowe, I think, was a little bigger than him, and also Francisco Lowe. He loses via straight ankle lock at ADCC to Mateusz Szczynski in under 3 minutes. Again, it's Polish Mateusz. It's Mateusz Szczynski. That's not that crazy. He beats Andy Varela at trials in ADCC trials in 2022. That was an incredible performance where Tackett looked the best he had ever looked. Him and his brother both looked amazing that trials. Again, decisions, Andy Varela gets him by points. He loses to Cade Rotolo, referee's decision at the first East Coast trials in 2021. That was the one that Cade ended up winning. And then we went on to win the world championships. He beat his homie, Cody Steele, who's now in the UFC, now getting leg lock wins in the UFC in 2021. He beats Pierre-Olivier Leclerc. He loses to Jacob Couch in 21. There's a lot of good wins, but there's also a lot of really high-level losses in a way that at least I forgot about for Tackett. Where it's I thought, the Ronaldo loss was kind of a fluke. I was no, he's had a lot of pretty high-profile losses in the last 5 years that I just didn't really remember. And I still think so highly of him and his brother, but he's had a very mixed results in the last couple of years that I forget. I think the big one, that big trials win, and then him and his brother being the first guy to go over to CJI 1 because they were so confident in their skill set. And then he has really struggled off and on. So I think this is a match to get him back on track. Again, Enrico Syed is young. He's hungry. He's a prospect. He does not have nearly the experience that William Tackett has. I think the experience will pay William Tackett mileage as long as he doesn't gas out again.
I think he'll learn from the last match to, better pace himself because that second round was just not good. He just looked like it was not, he was just out there on will and heart alone, and it was
Yeah.
not good.
Which was so weird after 5 minutes. Like that again, I'm kind of hesitant to pick Tackett after that matchup because of just how quickly he got that tired. That's just really concerning for me from a competitive perspective of like why'd you get so tired? So Corey from Grappling Ride basically listened to the podcast that Tackett did with Jiu-Jitsu, the Chewy podcast, and basically had some notes that was him talking. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but basically talking about how happy Tackett is with the deals of like basically the TLDR that Corey wrote was the UFC is investing heavily into its athletes. They're providing training and meals and medical help. They're helping to build those guys to build a brand. A lot of the athletes have different deals. We talked a lot about the deals on the show of like who has what deal. A lot of them have wildly different deals. Some of them are fights per year. Some of them have a number of fights. Some of them are like increasing per every fight that they have for money. It all varies with the contract. One of the things he really likes with now being a UFC BJJ athlete is that he can focus on like just training because he has access to all those resources. He no longer has to like teach. And that's like one of the really interesting things. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of what Gordon... One of the things we always gave Gordon a lot of credit for is like Gordon was never really a coach. Gordon was a competitor, and he was one of the few guys at the top of the world that was only a competitor that wasn't also trying to function and make a livelihood as a coach. He was focused solely on competing as an athlete. And it was like, oh yeah, you look at like Neymar, like insert your really, really good soccer player. Like they're not going out and running like their own teams during their professional career. Like you look at insert baseball guy's name, like Barry Bonds or LeBron James isn't out there running his own basketball team during the season. Like, no, he is focusing on being LeBron James and being like the basketball player that he is. Jiu-jitsu guys generally have to like be opening schools and running gyms. Like they're
Privates.
Everything is split between like doing and providing as a coach to make your income to be able to be an athlete in jiu-jitsu. And so it's one of the things I've always pointed to of like, as soon as guys can make enough money in the sport where they don't have to do that, you're going to see those guys make giant jumps up because suddenly it's like, oh yeah, you're just an athlete. That's all you're doing. You don't have to spend other time investing in other people. You can just focus on yourself as an athlete. And that for me speaks really, really well of like, okay, yeah, now you can be a professional athlete as opposed to before you were being an amateur athlete, having to coach, having to do other stuff. I think the ceiling is really, really high for the guys that can make that transition earlier in their career rather than later. So just a really interesting piece is like Corey took some notes from that podcast. So I thought was really, really interesting. Basically, William Tackett also thinks that more people are going to start leaving their contracts to come over because some of the deals that UFC has is pretty good as far as like athlete treatment that just don't exist in other jiu-jitsu sports. Again, Tackett's always been a little outspoken with some of the stuff, but he appreciates at least the treatment that him and his brother are getting. So there is that. It was an interesting note that I wanted to bring up. That is the alarm to upload the podcast. So that's how close we are recording to the upload date on Tuesday. Anything else on this matchup, Adam?
No, I don't know where this match is gonna go, but I'm picking Tackett to bounce back. I don't know. Like you said, Saeed could buggy choke him. Tackett could also A-block him. So this match could be weird or completely one-sided. Who knows? I'm gonna put money on Tackett bouncing back since with what you just said, that UFC is taking great care of them and doing all this. They can focus on training and nutrition and all that, and he can get himself together.
So, next match, we have Azmat Bakhtinov versus Thomas Davis. I don't really have much on this matchup. Match after that, we have the rematch of Andy Varela versus Jet Thompson. Andy Varela has a win over Jet Thompson at the PGF. Really quick win. Again, PGF is weird. Both guys operate really, really well in PGF. That was way back in 2024. So 2 years ago in the semifinals, submission in the second round, 36 seconds in, really fast. if Andy Varela has had a weird go at it recently, loses to Andy Murasaki via armbar very definitively, loses to Jason Knopf via tech fall. He beats Robbie Maloff at UFC BJJ 4. He beats Daniel Sattler at UFC BJJ 3. He loses to Andrew Tackett, UFC BJJ 1 by rear naked choke. He loses to Dante Leone, guillotine choke, UFC Fight Pass Invitational. He loses to Joseph Chen in 2024 and Craig Jones Invitational 1. And then again, he has that win over Jet Thompson. He also beats PJ Barch earlier in that tournament. Again, that was, and then he beats Kevin Burberry. Like, they lose to Achilles Rocha in 23. We're back a couple of years. Andy Varela, he made some really interesting comments after this last trials, like this last trials I was going to do. He's had some weird performances as of late where I'm really curious where he is at. And like, how much longer he's going to continue to do this as a pro. And usually when guys, there's a term in other sports stuff like that. Like when you start thinking about it, there's like when the time is, it's the time. And that's my concern with Varela. Again, he's not that old, but he does have a lot of miles on him. He's 34. He's been doing this a long time. Again, he's pro MMA. He has fights all the way back as an amateur in 2014. Like you're more than 10 years in at this point. There's a lot of miles, a lot of big tournaments on him. Jet Thompson is young. I think he's like maybe 18 now, maybe 19, like somewhere around there. If Andy Varela can bully him like he did in PGF, I think Varela takes this again. If Jet Thompson has continued to improve at the rate he was improving as a youth and as a juvenile and as a young adult, I think Jet Thompson can deal with the pressure that Varela is going to put on him and threaten Varela enough to get the win. That's sort of the dichotomy here is like, how much has Jet Thompson improved in the last 2 years? And how much is Varela still in it like he was 2 years ago? So for me, it's a tale of two matchups of like, I think it's very clear either way. I don't think this is close. I think it's like Varela's still that guy. He still has Jet Thompson's number. He still like can impose in the way that he did at PGF. Or nope, Jet Thompson has made the improvements he needed and isn't really scared of Varela like he used to be, or not scared the first time, but like can't get pressured on like Varela the first time. There's that. Adam, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, that last loss by Varela was really, really tough because there was a good back and forth against him and Murasaki. It's just Murasaki started to put a pace on that armbar control that he could not stop. He tried to defend it, and unfortunately, I believe something popped because he just kind of left his arm where it was. Even when they, did the calling of the submission and everything, I could see it going either way. I mean, if Varela's thinking about life after, then you may be correct. It may be time to hang it up. I mean, he does already run a gym.
Yeah.
So it's not as if he's without something to do. Because he,
make that transition to coaching.
Yeah. He's doing it now. He posts on social media techniques and things that, he likes to do. If Jet can clean up those mistakes from the last match, he could totally win. But it is hard to put away Andy, and when Murasaki put him away, he put him away.
Yeah, it was definitive. So okay, 2 more matchups on the card. Really, this is the one I'll talk about the most in the last two. We have Max Livington and Liam Crownston, Ethan's younger brother. Not much on that, other than it'd be really interesting to see now that Liam Crownston has been at Simple Man Martial Arts longer. He's been at B Team a while. We've not seen him on the pro scene a ton. He's been hit or miss the past past decade. Versus Max Livingston, I don't really have much on that match. It's interesting that it is here now that Ethan and his brother are coming over at the same time. The last match I really want to key into is the rematch between Landon Elmore and Keith Krikorian. This was the final of EBI 25? EBI 25, right? EBI 25 lightweights. He killed everyone in that, man. He beat Roman Corona. He beat Bryce Mitchell. He beat Reese Lafayette. He beat Keith Krikorian all quickly with leg locks. Heel hook, a heel hook, ankle lock. And he beat Keith very quickly in the finals. And then at UFC BJJ 4, he very quickly ankle locks and foot locks Nate Hernandez in like 40 seconds in the round 1. Then Landon Elmore runs up against Harrison Gabriel, who, again, primary no-gi player. Harrison Gabriel just beat Pato. We talked about it at Brasileiros, and, like, impressive. Again, in the gi, Harrison's mostly a gi guy, but Harrison gave Landon ran out of ideas versus Harrison Gabriel, and Harrison Gabriel definitively beat him in that matchup. Very, very telling. Keith Krikorian, again, looked very good. Just beat Matt Marsh at CFFC BJ. Beat Gianni Grippo in that same tournament, the lightweights, where he would then face Landon Elmore at the end. He beat Rafael Ferreira via heel hook. He beat Jonathan Wilson via heel hook. So they both had subs all the way up into that finals match. And then Keith gets, boom, ankle locked really, really quickly. I think that Keith is a veteran and will not make the same mistakes twice. Landon Elmore is very, very good. I think Keith will look at the Harrison Gabriel matchup and go, cool, I need to make sure that I don't get overextended versus Landon Elmore. He was on a hot streak that night. They both were on hot streaks at EBI 25 for the lightweight title for EBI. I just don't think that Keith will make those same mistakes and get like very quickly ankle locked by Landon Elmore. I think he will go and he will go, cool, I'm going to stop this. Now, that being said, Landon Elmore's at Kingsway. Or what are they now? Are they Kingsway?
I think so.
New Wave is Kings. Yeah,
It's Kingsway now.
It's Kingsway now.
Yeah, it was New Wave prior.
It was New Wave prior. That was a brain fart there. They have so much tape on Krikorian. They've had guys in their camp that have faced Krikorian. Like, you have tape on Krikorian going back to Purple, man. Those first EBI runs that you can look, you know his tendencies. Krikorian's improved his game, but Krikorian's game looks pretty much like Krikorian's games look for a couple of years now. So they're going to be able to game plan for it. But again, that Harrison Gabriel loss was commanding.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, like, that Gabriel loss was not close. So as much tape as they can look at as Krikorian, they can also look at the way a guy who's not a predominantly no-gi guy addressed your no-gi guy. And like you said, ran out of ideas.
But it was kind of the same way of like watching Harrison versus Mikey. It was like, man, Mikey kind of did to Harrison what Harrison did to Landon Elmore. And again, it's the level. Like, Landon Elmore's a prospect. Purple belt, like, on the meteoric rise and, like, absolutely could be world champion level one day. But that was, like, really tough. Like, to see, like, the level of, like, the guy in your division. You know, Harrison also going up to 45. Mikey's at Bantamweight. So Harrison going up a weight class. And look good for the weight class versus you versus Mikey. It's like, man, for you to be able to get to Mikey's level, that's a tough bridge. If any camp can do it, the Kingsway guys can probably do it. But I just think that Krikorian will kind of pull the veteran card here and go, cool, not going to get overextended, not going to get quickly ankle locked again. Again, he got ankle locked by Gavin Corbray, though, at trials. And so it was like, okay, like, it could be a feature, a piece of his game where it's like he's slowed down a little bit as he's gotten a little older. And maybe the feet are there in ways that they didn't used to be at 145. So, again, until Krikorian shows me that he's really lost a step, I find it really hard to pick Krikorian against to pick against Krikorian versus prospects, just because he's been there for so long. Again, 3 trials, silver medals, and a gold. You're like, he's just been consistent for a really long time. You know, he had a really good run there, and until he really shows that, okay, he's fallen off and he's like not the same guy that he was when he was medaling consistently at trials, I find it really hard to pick him in like a fluke matchup, not a fluke, in like a very quick, uncharacteristic sub loss. That being said, traditionally, I pick these like, hey man, he won the first time, he's going to win again. Like, the easy money here is like, hey man, Landon Elmore subbed him quickly in the finals of the EBI. He possibly can do that again. Krikorian's gotten leg locked in the last couple of years. with not a huge degree of consistency, but occasionally. I just think Krikorian will not make the same types of mistakes again and get into that fight.
I would expect Krikorian to be working his leg lock defense, knowing that that's what Landon Elmore wants.
And it's really like the tool that it seemed to be one of the few tools that Landon Elmore had. And then Harrison Gabriel took that away, and you're like, okay, so he's really sort of run out of ideas here, and he needs to come up with additional plans and additional ideas. And again, if any team can build it, the Kingsway guys can build that and can expand his game there. And if he's getting put on cards and he's getting these matchups, they believe in him to be able to, push him forward. But yeah, this is an interesting arms race. It's the prospect that Krikorian was 8 years ago versus the veteran that Krikorian was going against 8 years ago. It's a really interesting turning. Again, for this show, it's very, very interesting because I remember covering Krikorian when he won the EBI qualifier at Purple Belt, the internal one, to get on EBI in the first place. Landon Elmore is essentially at a really similar age and a really similar place to exactly where Krikorian was when we started covering him. And so it's really interesting to watch Krikorian now be the veteran in that situation, going up against the young prospect. And again, Krikorian had some young veteran losses, some prospect losses in the same way that Landon Elmore, I think, will, and then went on to correct them and went on to do great things and win a bunch of titles. So it's interesting. Again, money's on Krikorian here, but if it wouldn't really surprise me to watch Landon Elmore do exactly what he did in the first matchup and get a quick leg lock. So that's it. Adam, any closing thoughts for this matchup, or any closing thoughts for any other matchups on the card?
I hope they reschedule Bia Basilio. I hope she gets better. It seems like there was an appendicitis, I think is what I read. The reason she had to be pulled from this fight. But I want to see Cassia versus Bia. I'm just trying to see a scrap.
Yeah. You're a huge Bia Basilio fan, which is really funny. She has her fans, but it's like, you were like, man, I missed that match. Like, that's a match you missed. Like, yeah, man, I'm really excited for that match. It made me giggle. So yeah, I hope they remake it. If Cassia keeps that title, but I think even if, potentially, even if it goes the other way for Sabrina, I still would like to see the Cassia versus Bia matchup. It's always unfortunate because, again, Bia is pretty young, isn't she? How old is she? She's fighting MMA now. Bia is
just kind of wild to me. I never thought
30. Oh, okay, still super young. Never mind, I'm wrong. Yeah, both of them are still super young. We can absolutely have that matchup made. So yeah, so looks like a fun card. Some interesting matchmaking as always from the UFC. Again, I hope they continue to flesh out their divisions because again, athletes seem to be getting paid and leaving their organization in favor of the UFC. So this kind of thing works if you have all the best athletes in the world. And so that's kind of my only hope is that, like, hey, man, I hope you just get all the best athletes so we can see the best athletes fight each other again, kind of a la the UFC 2015, right around that era where it's like they really did kind of have most of the best guys. And so we got to see some really, really exciting high-level matchups with consistency, and guys are going to get paid in jiu-jitsu. So, Adam, that's all I got. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine. It's my co-host,
Adam.
And we are the Grappling Reruns, and that's what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.